Hello, folks. Welcome to Medium Unlimited. My name is Cyn Lagos, and today I will be your mentor. In today's series, we are going to be focusing on photography in Adobe Lightroom. This is a brand new series, so welcome. This is episode 2 if you're joining me for the first time. If not, I know that you're coming from Adobe Live, where we did our first episode focused on motion. So Medium Unlimited is inspired by the idea that, you know what, we're so curious. We're not limited by a single medium. So for myself, in my journey, I focus on design, photo, and I'm aspiring filmmaker. So motion, video editing, video recording, all of that. And it's super cool. And so I love sharing all of this different expertise and tools and skills I learn along the way here with this audience on YouTube and on Behance. So folks, say hello on the chat. I love to see some familiar names out here on Behance. I'm checking the YouTube chat and the Behance chat as well. Lots of multitasking. I have Rod here. Hi, from New Zealand. That's awesome. We have Biz Wajid. That's a tricky name, but hi, I'm so happy you're here. I'll be checking YouTube as well. All right, so I'm excited because I'm going to jump into one of my favorite workflows in Lightroom. So I'm going to be jumping on Lightroom, not Lightroom Classic. Before I do that, I'm going to do a quick introduction for those folks who may not be familiar with my work. So let's jump on here. All right, so my name is Cyn Lagos. I am focused on 3 different mediums. I love exploring mediums and not giving myself too many limits and how many ways I can be curious in this world of creativity. But one of my strongest, most powerful journeys has been in the medium of photography, and I want to share some of that work that I've done with you here. So a lot of my photography, especially my street photography, has remnants of my design background. You will see here a lot of geometry, a lot of composition that is fairly organized, and color palettes are very primary, and all of that kind of comes from my journey as a designer. I'm a self-taught photographer, and I've been doing this now, I think, for over 7 years, which is mind-boggling. Design for even longer. And so it's been an incredible journey for me. For those of you who may be just starting your journey as photographers, don't get discouraged. I have definitely stepped into different spaces. You can see here some food photography. Like, how does that work? You know, it all ends up being the same thing. Composition ends up being the same thing. Primary colors, beautiful geometry. So you find it everywhere you go. And I love that about photography. I love that I can always find an anchor, right? And my anchor could be color, it could be composition, layout design, subject matter can change and shift, but I can always find a way to curate the world. And it's a special journey. I absolutely love it. And one of my favorite parts about photography has to be the editing, the post-editing element. Because in post-editing, there's so many routes that one can take. For me personally, and the one that I'm going to share with you today, is conceptual editing, right? So really considering the imagery and the story of the image and try to think what is the most suitable edit for that image. So this is my website here, cynlagos.com. If you want to take a gander and see most of my work, get to know me a little bit more, let's get started on Lightroom. So I invite you to jump on Lightroom alongside with me. I'm going to be demonstrating some of my workflows, my approach approach, my conceptual approach to editing my photography. This series today is going to be focused on some beautiful photos that I took while in San Francisco and in a special trip where I got to stream for Adobe Live. And so I took it upon myself to go out into the streets and see what San Francisco has to offer, right? Like every city is so unique. And whenever I'm out into these spaces, I'm often thinking, well, what can I find? I will always find something. Either I find a subject matter that is a person or architecture, or sometimes even symbols could be ever present, especially in bustling cities. And so there's no really like lack of photography that's out there. I know that's one of the most difficult things to do once you're getting started, right? Like you're always thinking, but what should I photograph? Should I photograph food? Should I photograph fashion? What is my thing? Well, you're going to discover that as you photograph. That is just the only way through. Believe me, it's the only way through. And that way you're going to find the thing that kind of pulls you the most whenever you pick up your camera. So we have a few folks here, again, joining us on the chat. Ty, there, Ty says, these are amazing. I can see this on Divi Resorts websites. I love it. Yeah, I'm glad that you thought that. That's actually very fitting. A lot of my photography journey stemmed from hospitality. At some point, you know, we all try to kind of find our nooks. Street photography doesn't have a grand space for monetization. I honestly do it just because I'm so drawn to it. And I think it's kind of picked up a lot now, but I've been doing it for so long that it's remained a hobby, and I do it anytime I'm in a new city, in a new country. I try it out. So I welcome you to drop on the comments, drop on the chat. What is a city that you hope to visit and photograph? And maybe you visited it before, but you never had the chance to photograph it. I know I felt that way the first time I went to France. I did not know how to photograph. And I would love to go back and have a chance to photograph it with my technique today. So let's get started here. And I'm going to walk you through my curation process. I did not only take these photos. Of course, I took many more. But I'm going to tell you why I've hand selected these particular images. Okay. And we're going to be together for a little bit, so I want to walk through this as quickly as possible so you can get enough nuggets of knowledge here while we're together. Okay, so you can see here, this one's a very strong image because it has a subject, and there's nothing better than having a person that is absolutely intriguing, fabulous in their own right, and I love the context of their art here as well. And so this one's already been post-processed. So I wanted to show you this one particularly so you can see that before and after. Right, you can see it there. And it was important for me to really navigate this color palette with the same essence that this figure is giving me, right? So look at their outfit. Like their outfit is telling me so much about their choices in color palettes. So I wanted to bring in that kind of warmth at the same time, bring in that teal back into this color. And before that, it was a, admittedly a gloomy evening that turned into a beautiful sunset, but it was gloomy. So in itself, a photo may not give you exactly what you're feeling in the moment. That's why post editing is so vital in the photography process. I always look forward to the post-editing process. And then we have this image here. Actually, she was absolutely wonderful. I was able to talk to her for a little while. She told me a wonderful story of how long she lived in San Francisco. And I found this so peculiar, she's just, watering her roses. This is a day in a life, and I wanted to capture that. I'm not entirely done with this image. I think composition wise, I can go a little bit further. So there's a lot to talk about here. So these are the selections I picked on purpose because I've already kind of gone in there and curated them and edited them. This one particularly, I wanted a sense of foreground. You can see the foreground here. All of this is foreground, and it helps really frame this fellow right here, right? And so it's kind of interesting how things that might feel like obtrusive because you're so far away, you're not up close to your subject, may end up helping you, may end up working in your favor if you really find a way to select it within that composition. So this is unedited. Of course, I had to get an image of the Golden Gate Bridge, and maybe you're already seeing this image 1,000 times, and that in itself, I gotta admit, is the most challenging part of photographing these cities that are so familiar to the entire world, right? Like, you've seen this 1,000 times, we've seen it in films. How can I reinvent it? So I'll show you a photo later of how I kind of try to, but sometimes you don't have to reinvent the composition or the subject. You can reinvent the color editing. So I have a few photos here. Hi, Mario. Hi, Rod. What's up? Rod's saying that the place that they want to visit is Tokyo, Japan. It's on my bucket list. Rod, I'm going to show you some of my Japan photos, and hopefully that will inspire you because it's some of my favorite photos. Thankfully, the stars aligned. I was both technically proficient and heading to Japan, and that was perfect. So hopefully I'll get to revisit it again with a new mindset because it's always different, to see a new scene. Mario says, beautiful photos. And Rod says, I'd like to go back to Prague. Never been there, but it sounds wonderful. Let's get started here on some of this editing process. So I have a few photos here to select from. All of them seem to have a very close range of lighting. So what I mean by that is that I photographed them around the same time, which means for me immediately that if I was to edit any one of these photos, I will get an edit that I can paste and replicate onto these other scenes. Why? Because they have the same light conditions. So this is a great way to consider whether you can batch edit your photos right off the bat. You can see it just by visually seeing that the color palette is the same, or by just checking in your information when you shot it, at what time. It looks here like I shot it at 6:34 p.m. and let's see, when did I photograph this one? Around 7:39. I mean, it's fairly close. So of course the lighting conditions are very similar. So to demonstrate that, let's begin with this photo right here. Let's start on our adjustment layers here, and I have them all open. So let's close them so we can navigate them slowly. I always double click. It looks like it's a one-click situation. All right, so light-wise, how are we doing with light? I think the lighting here is perfect because I really worked at it. I shot in black and white, which is something I like doing, where my JPEG comes out black and white, but my RAW retains the color. So I know that my color is going to be my lighting is going to be perfect because I shot in black and white, even though you can't see it there. But an example, I'm going to just press this button up here that says black and white, so you can see how I saw it in my camera. I saw it like this. This is how I saw it in my camera. And I can see that the lights weren't overexposed, that my blacks weren't completely blacked out where there's no information. So I knew that was a good photo for me to take. Thankfully I had a mini tripod, which I place steady, and that really helped in creating a strong focus, right? So that's just for you to see how I shoot it in my camera, which I shot with, in this case, let's see, what did I shoot with? It looks like, oh, I shot with my Sony. My Sony, which Sony did I shoot this with? I think it was the A7R3 and a 20 millimeter lens, 1.8. Okay, so I like editing color, lighting just as well in this panel right here, in the light panel. But I'm actually gonna skip that light panel because, quite honestly, my favorite section within the light panel is actually the curve section. And the curve is a little bit intimidating for most people, but it actually is fairly easy and to manipulate and play around with. You can do so much within this area. You can correct lighting, right? Highlights, midtones, and shadows. That's lighting, right? And you can correct color channels. So your red, your greens, and your blue channels, which contains the opposite palette. So somebody can just hand you the curve tool, and that in itself will enable you to do everything you need to, which is quite wonderful. And let me demonstrate that just now. So for example, if I use this curve tool, I will begin in the first dot right here, and I'm going to use this line and navigate my highlights, which are all the way to the top up here, my midtones, which are right here in the middle, right? And my shadows, which are all the way down here. All the way down is pure black. Shadows really reside somewhere between the midtones and all the way to black, right? So black, shadow, midtone, let's make a dot right there. Highlights right here. Forgot the shadows, and absolute white. Okay, that's how you read that. And so if I move the highlights, you can see that information starts to be discovered within my raw file. Isn't that amazing? That's the power of shooting in raw. We didn't even know that was there. That happened more visibly later, but this is actually within that information. So I can double click to reset that, and I can just make a quick contrast as opposed to a strong one. And the same goes, actually, let me show you what then the shadows would look like, right? So it starts to pull that. And so I like to kind of create a little bit of contrast here, and the famous S curve is really wonderful at creating contrast. So we can do something like this. And the key with Lightroom is always subtle is best. Subtle changes. You're welcome to push that button all the way to the edge and see what effects can be made. But I suggest that you, at the end, commit to a subtle change. And it's a compound effect, right? You make a subtle change here, you make a subtle change there, and then it adds up and it creates a beautiful scene. So that's the way we're gonna approach curves. So let's do the same thing here. Highlight, midtone, shadows. Bring that down, bring this up, right? That's some contrast. Or you can bring the highlights down, bring the shadows up. Let's do it that way. I'm gonna do all of them that way. Highlights, midtones, shadows. So bring this down and bring this up. And you're probably wondering, why are you doing it to all the channels? Well, it's a compound effect, right? It's layering on top of each other. If I do this, then they all kind of blend together like they would in Photoshop when you put layers on top of each other. And you can see that in itself created a really nice new tonality to my color palette. So it's interesting enough that the default looks really like this blue. This particular hue of blue is unique in that we see it in everything. If you look at a phone image, it's gonna be this blue. So because we're being conditioned that that's the blue we see in phone photography, we don't want this image to be confused for that. So we have to kind of think about the cultural conditioning of colors. Isn't that wild? We have to think about that. Do we want this to be confused for a phone photo or maybe a film photo? Wouldn't that be better? Or maybe a cinematic, moment shot for a movie. Isn't that way better? Like there's just so many emotions that we can really evoke with color, right? So let's bring it back to that. So that is a subtle change already that's looking so much better in my book. And if I bring down this here, this highlight where we discover the sunset, that really sweet sunset, then now we're navigating like a new scene altogether, right? Before, after. That's wonderful, right? So let me see. I'm going to check in on my YouTube fam real quick. How we're doing. All right, we're doing great here. Let's see. Okay, awesome. All right, so as we move towards the rest of the photos, what I wanted to demonstrate is how it's possible to do batch editing. Now that we just made a subtle change, okay, we haven't gone that far yet. We're gonna do copy and we're gonna do paste in here. Just like that. It didn't mess up my image in the way that it could if I potentially pasted on this one. You see, if I pasted on that, it looks vastly different because this is a different light condition. So if the light condition is different, that means you need to go back into the adjustments and readjust those edits to fit this image, right? But because these were shot close in range in time, all I have to do is like maybe adjust the midtones and highlights to kind of make it fit a little bit better. For the most part, it's already a great fit. So I'm just pasting here. And we even got that beautiful kind of sunset hue there as well. So that's perfect. Let's apply it to this one too. And here's a little bit harder because we have some really true whites. So right here, that's a true white. That's why it looks like that, right? So we have to be very careful of how we push that. But that's an easy fix. We pull up this lever and just like that, right? So that's awesome. We have batch editing possible here. So we don't have to copy and paste every time, by the way. We can just select them all and then paste edit settings. And it will paste it among all of them, okay? So now let me go into this particular image right here. Let's see, we have that scene. Okay, so for example, I love this image. I love this color edit. I think we've done great with the curve adjustment. So I want to continue to experiment. So how do I do that without foregoing this edit altogether? That's one of my favorite things to do, is to continue to experiment in color editing. I like going in here and adding a new version. So versions does autosave. So we do seem to have some autosaves here already that were made. So it looks like I already made one right here. So here's my original and here's my current edit. So if I want to continue to edit, I can, and it will auto save a new edit so that I can always revisit it. Maybe if this is in collaboration with a client, we can discuss whether we want to move forward with edit 1, 2, or 3, right? So let's see. Yeah, I think that should work right there. So let's say we go back to our original here and we want to continue to play around with this. I love playing with this color palette here and kind of pushing it out into a different direction. So bringing that highlight into that yellow zone can make it look very old school and nostalgic. Do you see that? But you gotta find a balance by doing the same to the opposite. So doing a little bit of opposite pull. So it's a push and pull game here. So I see that I have green, blue, and that's it. It's green and blue. So I'm going to jump into my second favorite section here in Lightroom, which is going to be color grading. So color grading down here. Right? So color grading, we are talking about a similar set of rules. Highlights, midtones, and shadows. And since we're already getting familiar with it through Curve tool, jumping into the color grading tool is not going to be that difficult. We just have to be aware of what selections, what choices we're making. So for example, the shadows down here, I don't really love them. They are just kind of black. They have a little bit of yellow tint, and we have blue, yellow and blue. So oftentimes, if we're talking about contrast, we can also talk about contrast in the context of color, not just light contrast, but color contrast. So if I have blue and green, an opposite color would be something a little bit warmer, a little bit on the red, pink tones. So let's add some red and pink into our midtones or our shadows, for example. So we can do something like this. So we start to add some complexity to this image, right? If we were to add it to our midtones, for example, you can start to see how that affects it. Using the blending tool, we can see how all the colors end up blending together so that either our shadow choice overwhelms that selection or it's a little bit kind of more toned down, right? So I love the way that happens here because this, to me, is a neutral image. There's not a lot of storytelling in that post editing. But this starts to come into a space of nostalgia. Pink and reds tend to be utilized in cinema for a sense of romance and beauty in the world, right? Like romanticizing a day of fishing near the Golden Gate Bridge. That's kind of, who gets to do that on any given day, right? That's kind of amazing. And we have some new folks here. Wahi from Yemen joining us. Ooh, that was a lot to say. Thank you for joining us. This is wonderful. So we have a lot to say here in post-editing. It may seem so metaphoric and abstract, but in fact, that is what is necessary to kind of start weaving tales of emotions through your post-editing. And I always think about that whenever I'm doing my color editing. So for example, let me know if you want a particular photo to be edited because I'm just kind of jumping here as I go. So for example, let's look at this image. Immediately, I need to straighten this image because it's not cropped properly, right? So let's say here, we're gonna use the straightening tool and make sure our horizon's straight, which, by the way, I'm a huge advocate of breaking that rule. If you want to do a Dutch angle on your photography, which means like something crooked, you're welcome to do that. Rules aren't actually anything that I teach you here or on any other medium. It's not truly a rule. It's a guide. So it's a guide. It's a starting place for you to evolve, right? So if you know a guide, try to see what the opposite looks like. What does it look like if I did do a Dutch angle? Make it look like it's climbing or it's falling. Is it falling now? Whoa, that's so peculiar, right? It gives you a different sense. So these angles are often utilized for sport photography, action, movement. Like for example, in this case, we have the trolley moving. So it's a great fit, but it's already evoking a different emotion, right? So do you want that emotion? What does it denote to climb up? What does it denote to go down? So it's a peculiar choice that you can make, but just know that it's going to translate a sense of of action, but also other metaphors. So just be aware what those may be. And so I love how it looks. I don't know. I love an angle. So I'm going to keep it this way for this one. I'm going to go in here and revisit our curves and go into our highlights, bring them down, create an opposite S curve. You saw what that did there. And then do this. This is an easy way to edit any image. Edit the color contrast of any image. It's an easy way. And then if you want to go a step further, then in the blue, right, let's bring that midtone down to become a yellow. So now it's starting to enter that like Wes Anderson vibes. I'm going to straighten it. I think it's kind of, I'm going to straighten it for now, just in case, just as we are demonstrating the color palette. Right there. I kind of like that, that light there, but these lights are wonderful too. So you can see there what that looks like, right? Before and after. So that green starts to kind of yellow green color is often found in like Fujifilm film. So it's something that we're kind of gotten accustomed to seeing and associating with a sense of cinematic look. And I like that. But in order to create a balance, I'm going to go into my color again and go maybe into midtones. And like we did before, we're using green and blue, opposite of that. Where's the opposite of that? Let's look at that. Let's look at this just by looking at this section alone. Look, what's the opposite of green? Any of these colors right here. That purple, that red. So you have your color wheel right there for you to choose a color contrast. Okay, so let's do a little color contrast. And this color contrast is applying to my midtones. If you want, it can also apply to your shadows. Let's apply a little bit of purple to my shadows. Before, after. So that's a peculiar edit. It's very out there. It's very different. It's a little bit more on the fictional side, right? We know that maybe the sky may or may not get like this. It's really, really on the creative aspect of editing, right? So it's really up to you to say, I'm post-editing so that I can technically correct my image, or I'm post-editing so that I can find creative ways to create metaphors, or both of them, right? There's always so much room for that kind of editing along the way. Okay, so as we move here through our images, I love the way that color palette ended up. I wanted to show you, demonstrate one of my favorites during this photo session. I came across this amazing woman who was just such a light of life. She was absolutely grounded and happy, and it was just, I think we both just like allowed ourselves to be there in front of each other and witness each other, which was beautiful, right? She saw my camera, she was totally curious and embracing of my curiosity for her. So I feel so blessed whenever I get to do things like this. I mean, I walked away absolutely happy. Look at all her expressions, right? So I love when she was putting on the glasses. So I wanted to do a focus on the glasses. She had a moment where she was talking about like San Francisco was like this. She got very passionate. She was telling me tales of yesteryear. We talked for quite a bit. And I love this particular expression that she has here. Although it feels very kind of random. Like I obviously didn't pose it. It's kind of that brings that value to me, right? It's not, hey, pose here and smile, because we all got to smile for some reason. My memory is she's passionate about what she's talking about, right? She's passionate about her way of thinking, and I admire that. So I handpicked this image to edit because of that. So I absolutely love it. There's nothing better than finding wonderful human beings that are absolutely themselves in this world, and then they just embrace you like this without mistrust. They just embrace you. And most of all, in today's day and age, I gotta say that when some strangers embrace my camera in today's day and age, where cameras are often seemed as like terrible. I don't know why, but there's a hostile like narrative around cameras now that I didn't experience at the beginning of my career. I absolutely love when I get a chance to meet people that don't feel that hostility, that they just immediately are willing to kind of just be present and allow me to share that I'm passionate about my photography. So this was a wonderful human being who allowed me to do that. So let's do some post editing for her, right? She has some great images here. So I did edit this one, I think up to there. Yeah. So let's see, which one should we begin on? 1, 2, 3, or 4? I'll be checking the chat. Ty says, yes, and you captured her so well. I can feel it throughout the screen. I'm so glad you said that. I'm so happy to hear that. Every time I find myself photographing humans is one of my favorite things to do. I'll show you really quick what I mean by that. So under my portfolio here in photography, you're always going to find my street photography, and you can see all the different scenarios where I get a chance to photograph people. And it's just like quite different. And in here, in We the Peoples, I don't know why I have it so deep in there, but I have photos that to me are beautiful, nostalgic memories of wonderful human beings that embraced my camera in that point. And even this moment, I absolutely love it. She went from this, she looked at me and she did this. And it was the A-OK, the green light for me to photograph her. And I felt like it was nonverbal, it was absolutely perfect. And we had that connection in that moment. And all of these people, first person I met the first time I went to Chicago, just crossing each other's path, it was like, it was amazing. So I love looking at these photos and getting a sensibility of that moment. But you can see here, even in all of these photos are post-edited. You can see in the post-editing process that I try to keep that moment alive by honoring either the color, the colorful aspect of it, or the lack of color that I felt would be fitting to that character, right? Like this image right here, I wouldn't have put all of the color around them. I felt that even the palm trees, I desaturated them because that's the vibe that this person gave me. So I was like, this is great. I mean, yeah, it's a great cat. Why would I put color? I think that would have been the opposite, right? So I love that. So let's go back to this image as we continue to edit our photos here. Let's go into maybe this one. I honestly think this one's super cool. I think gestures are a very peculiar thing to capture because they're so private, right? Gestures can be very reserved for intimate moments with people who you trust. And again, as you have heard, my interaction was very trustworthy and we were bonding. So you can see this gesture here was absolutely perfect. So I'm gonna go in here, and there's many ways to approach this, right? So I'm gonna, first and foremost, let's correct the lighting, and I'm gonna use the target adjustment tool right here, right? We're in the reset curves, and we're gonna go into the target adjustment tool, that little circle. That's gonna enable us to select areas and adjust them based on either the light or the channels, right? So I'm gonna use the light first. So I want this here, and you can see how I can manipulate that directly from my screen, from black, shadows, midtones, highlights, white. We're not gonna go too far. And then same here, there's a lot of black here. Do I want it to be a little bit more on the faded side? That could be a cool look. Let's see there. Let's do around there. So we can see more of the wrinkles here, more of the information of the different layers of black that she's wearing. I mean, she's wearing black gloves, you know, this wonderful black jacket, black turtleneck, glasses. The glasses were very peculiar to me. She switched them for a second, but like I love the choices she makes. And then we have here under red, we can go and use also the target adjustment tool. Let's pick it and adjust that red to go into becoming stronger or less than, right? So let's go somewhere here. It could be really cool. Red is a very powerful color. You got to be very aware that red, oh, I did it. I keep doing that. Okay. I need to select this little guy. There you go. Right? Did I select that? Yes. Red can be a very powerful color. So also keep in mind that red exists in our skin tone. So you have to be aware of how far you take it. It can end up kind of creating a skin tone that is not realistic. So gotta be aware of that. And so let's go here into the blues, and let's see if we find any blue in here. I like it when it goes into that kind of yellow hue. I love a powerful like filter that just completely polarizes a scene with either pure like orange, because like I don't know, I'm a fan of orange in general, but like I think warmth can create a different essence out of a portrait. So a polarizing scene can be really tricky because it's obviously global. It's applying to the whole picture. You can see it's applying to the highlights, the midtones, the shadows. Seems like it applies everywhere. But with this method, it's not just a filter on top, right? It's a little bit more embedded. So let's go. Now I have all of this red. So in this same practice, this is the technique I'm teaching today: color contrast, emotions in color editing, right? And in that train of thought, let's create some color contrast here. So we have a lot of red in this case. We don't have green and blue, we have red. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna add the opposite color. So the opposite could be green, right, to the shadows, or it could be a little bit of blue, you know? And just like that, you're creating so many different edits in one go, right? You have one edit right there. And if we go around and get to the green section, we have a different edit there. Now, green can be very metaphoric to symbolic to things that are, I wouldn't say the most positive. So green can be greed. Green can be, sickly at times. So you got to be careful where you apply green. And sometimes I like to apply green very subtly just to not take over that metaphor too harshly, especially with a gesture like what she's doing here. I don't want the wrong concept to be translated by accident. So yeah, I love that entire red. Actually, I don't know. I don't know why I'm a fan of that right now, but I am. So I'm going to create a little bit of shadow contrast in the lights right there and in my whites and before, after. And so that's just an option in itself, right? Like if we go here into our versions, we see the version that we have now and the version that we're going to be saving. Let me see. So under named, we can create our own version. So I can say warm, polarize. So when you add that polarizer, that's always so cool because it adds that warmth on it. But if I want to continue to edit from here, I will keep this edit untouched for me to go back to, and just go start from here and create a new edit, right? So for example, if I want to do a quick mask on my subject here, I'm going to use AI to detect the subject. Let's see how long it takes on this one because we are streaming. Okay, there it is. That was fast, easy, right? So as we're nearing our last minutes here, let's do something so that she pops out from the frame. So I did select her, but I can also go in here and click invert subject selection. What that does is select the opposite of her, right? So the background. Alternatively, you can choose in the background, but in this case, I'm going with it as I go. And what I'm going to do now that I have this selected is I'm going to affect it with some attributes. I want her to feel more separated from the background. When we were there, we were in a sidewalk, so I couldn't go any further. And my lens was a 20 millimeter, so it's kind of open. So I couldn't get her to separate too far from the background, but there are ways that you can create that. So I'm going to do that by applying the same effect as I did to the guy with the cat. We're going to desaturate that so it removes attention from it. So we're going to desaturate it a little bit, and we're going to also create some contrast. So we have some separation from the background. So that's just another option for me to select from because we are playing with versions here. We can use some color contrast as we've learned, right? So that's how it looks. And those are all very subtle actions. And now if I copy this, I can paste this edit onto all these other images. So we can batch edit, right? But I want the version that I had earlier before, right? So let's grab this version and copy it, select all of them, and paste. That's simple. Isn't that wild? We could just copy and paste. Did I do it? Yes. And so for some of them, this one has the right light condition. For this one, I would have to adjust the exposure. That feels like a little bit more old school, and I really like it. If you want to go and do the very loved grain, you can do that really easily here under effects and add a little bit of grain, which I don't think it's going to translate in this stream, but grain often flattens the image. I love grain because I shoot film as well, and I love when it comes out grainy. But this was digital, and I like digital too. So I'm going to keep it as digital in this case and just keep the nostalgic film essence through the color palette in this case. And I love that. I love that we have now a series. If I wanted to share this scene with as a series, I can. I love this one too, right? So I think that's what's so wonderful about, we didn't get to that one, but that's fine. We'll have another chance to play around here. So I love editing and post editing in Lightroom because I get to consider the concept behind the photo, right? The concept of whether how I felt in that moment, what it made me feel, how can I honor the characters in my image, the scene, the moment, the life being lived in these images, right? So I find this to be a wonderful space for me to do that, to honor those metaphors, to honor those ideas, and continue to just play with Lightroom with that mindset, with that concept in mind. So that said, folks, let me go here onto my website real quick. Here. All right. So again, my name is Cyn Lagos, and I have all the classes here available on my website for you to check out. Anytime we have any new streams, you will find them here for this new series called Medium Unlimited. I kind of was just reading there. So if you want to check out more of my work, you can find it here. I will be placing the schedule for this stream on my website, so definitely keep up with that. If you are here on Behance, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, where I will be going live on Wednesdays at 3 o'clock. Let me see, I'm going to switch over to this one. Okay, so I'm going to be going live on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. To showcase photo or design any given day, to really expand our mediums, our skill sets, our knowledge of mediums. If you want to learn about motion and how motion plays a role in this medium curiosity, you can jump over to Adobe Live, also at 3 p.m. on Mondays. So I love everyone who got to participate in today's stream and also on Monday's stream. Y'all are always the best. It's always fun to be here. I hope you learned some new skill sets today, or you felt a good momentum of inspiration. That's all I ask for. And I hope you get to join me on this new journey of Medium Unlimited on Mondays and Wednesdays. And yeah, again, my name is Cyn Lagos. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll talk next time.